Coming up in today's newscast, the Shin Bet reports that a foreign country is attempting to hack Israel's April 2019 elections. Former Israeli minister Gonen Segev is convicted of spying for Iran, and the 2019 Eurovision slogan and logo are finally unveiled. Israeli security forces responded to two terror-related incidents over the past 24 hours, with an Israeli teenage girl being stabbed and a Palestinian teen being detained in Jerusalem. First, Tuesday evening, a potential terror attack was averted when border police officers detected a 16-year-old Palestinian suspect with a large jackknife hidden in his coat. The Jerusalem native was attempting to cross through the Shuafat checkpoint in Jerusalem and has since been transferred for questioning. In a statement, security forces attributed the swift and safe detention of the suspect to a combination of advanced technological means and professional skilled personnel. Unfortunately, just the next morning, a 14-year-old Jewish-Israeli girl was stabbed in the hand and neck early on Wednesday in the Armon HaNatziv neighborhood of Jerusalem. She was attacked just prior to 7 a.m. in the morning while waiting for the bus to school near her home. After the attack, the attacker fled the scene, and the victim managed to escape home, where her mother immediately contacted emergency services. The teen was then taken to the Shaarei Tzedek Medical Center and is reportedly in stable condition. Finally, though investigations are only beginning, reports all suggest the stabbing to be a terror attack, especially as the Armon HaNatziv neighborhood has been the scene of many attacks in recent years. Jerusalem Mayor Moshe Leon, in response, has announced reinforcements to security in the area. The director of the Shin Bet security services, Nadav Argaman, has now warned that a foreign country intends to interfere in the upcoming Israeli elections through cyber attacks. Chadashot News initially reported on his statements, which were made on Monday at a conference of the Friends of Tel Aviv University, but Israel's military censor initially barred publication of any details. Shortly after the news program, however, the censor partially removed the ban and more details have since emerged. Which foreign country is behind the supposed threat, though, is still not allowed for publication. Additionally, Argaman is quoted as saying that he doesn't know in favor of whom or against whom the foreign country will interfere, explaining that he doesn't know what political interests are behind the threat either. But he clearly stated that a foreign country will attempt to meddle in the April elections, and that, quote, "I know what I'm talking about," end quote. In a statement, the Shin Bet then also responded to the report Tuesday night and clarified that Israel and the intelligence community have the tools and capabilities to locate, monitor, and thwart foreign influence in Israeli elections. Meanwhile, State Comptroller Yosef Shapira announced earlier on Tuesday that his office is also planning to conduct a comprehensive testing of cybersecurity with regards to the upcoming vote. He said his focus would be on social media and cyberspace, as well as the readiness of authorities to protect their computerized systems from cyber attacks. Regardless, fears are high, as this threat is all too familiar to the case in the United States, where there is still suspicion of meddling in the 2016 presidential election, in part through social media by Russia. Joining us now for more on hacking an election in the wake of Shin Bet's latest announcement is CEO and founder of SciTech Consulting, cyber intelligence and privacy expert Chen Hefer. Chen, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so first of all, what are your initial reactions to Nadav Argaman's announcement that he believes a foreign entity to be meddling with Israel's upcoming elections?
So I take it in two different ways here. First, as a civilian, I really like what I hear. I really like to know that we are safe and secure and our election systems are secure as possible. But also as a cyber expert, I ask myself another question. Does these people that are in charge and bodies, and not just Nadav Argaman specifically, but these bodies that are responsible and in charge of our security and safety and integrity of election results, are they also convinced that we are 100% secure because they are the ones to actually make sure that those controls that we have in place will work efficiently and effectively? And as a cyber expert, I continue asking myself, where did I get it wrong? Where did I not do the right thing? So I assume that we already failed, and our security controls already failed and breached by those adversaries that would like
So you're saying that if Nadav Argaman, if the head of the Shin Bet is going on television and saying, hey, we think there's a possible breach, you're saying as a security expert, cybersecurity expert, that chances are it probably already happened.
Well, that's the assumption.
Okay.
As a security expert, you always assume that we are already breached.
Okay.
That's the assumption that you wake up in the morning and you go to sleep at night. barely get some sleep at night as a security expert.
Yeah. Okay, so we know that Russia has already, the Kremlin has already come out and saying that, they have nothing to do with it. Regardless of whether or not that's true, you've worked on the election, on multiple elections in the United States as well, including the 2016 election. Who do you think is most likely responsible? Who has the most to gain from meddling in Israel's elections? And what can be done about that?
Right. So I assume we won't hear anything official from the Kremlin or China or anyone else in the world. Nothing official about messing with the Israeli election results. But there are interests. This is the world order. Israel is in the center of the world order as much as the U.S. Back in 2015, 2016, when I was part of the security system of the federal government in the U.S., I was in charge of one of the most sensitive systems of the 2016 presidential election in the U.S. Back then, we assumed that we were already breached. Yes, the public heard that you're okay and everything's good. There were a lot of talks after the election about the involvement of the Russians in those elections. Personally, we detected some Chinese involvement in those hacking attempts, and some of these attempts probably succeeded. This is just part of the information that I can share here with you on television.
Okay, so again, what did you find? What is it that they were trying to influence exactly? Because we know with Russia, the allegations against Russia is that, they had a team of people who may or may not have been connected with the government, but they were using social media to influence American politics. Do you see maybe the same thing from China, or was it more direct influence to the vote count?
So, yeah, this is a good question. Social media is one way to affect the public's opinion on the election. But assuming everybody's following the rules and people go out there and vote, and those votes are actually counted as they are, and that information is being kept, and the integrity of the information is being kept. What I'm talking about is really about hacking those systems and manipulating the information after the results came into the systems themselves. And there are many, many bodies around the world that would try to influence the Israeli election and therefore the world order for their own benefits.
And how does the American and the Israeli system match up, in your opinion?
Well, the Americans are doing a lot, for sure. The American government is investing a lot of money in this and training the people. Here in Israel, we also do a lot. And I think all the security bodies we have out there are contributing days and nights to secure not just the election system, but just security in general in Israel. And this is a bless. However, from my opinion, this is my own personal opinion, I would like to see and hear more about the cooperation between those bodies. You mentioned the Shin Bet, I can mention the Israeli police, I can mention a lot of other intelligence bodies here in Israel. We can expect from them as civilians, as voters, to work together, to cooperate, and therefore to better secure our systems.
All right, Chen, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, speaking of elections, Yesh Atid leader Yair Lapid officially launched his party's new election campaign on Tuesday night. And speaking to hundreds of Yesh Atid supporters at an event in Rishon LeZion, Lapid also responded for the first time to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's televised news conference on Monday, calling the Prime Minister hysterical.
Lapid told the crowd, quote, "We got final proof that someone suspected of serious crimes cannot be Prime Minister," adding that the speech was far from a dramatic announcement as planned, but rather more desperate. Lapid said, quote, "I've known Netanyahu for years. He's cracking under the pressure. A country with complex challenges cannot afford a prime minister with frayed nerves," end quote. On Monday, Netanyahu held a live press conference, which he said would be dramatic. However, the announcement fell very short. Instead, he demanded that he be allowed to confront the state witnesses in the corruption probes against him. The prime minister then added that the cases against him were an attempt by the left to oust him from office and that he is 100% convinced of his innocence. But back to last night's rally, Lapid addressed Netanyahu directly and said, "There is a country to think about, Mr. Netanyahu. This country is bigger than you and it's more important than you. After yesterday, it's clear that we can't carry on like this." The Yesh Atid party leader then concluded by telling the crowd that he will replace Netanyahu as prime minister and that Yesh Atid will win the election because, quote, "we work on what is actually important," end quote. Finally, in a jab at former IDF Chief of Staff Benny Gantz and his new party, Israel's Resilience, Lapid said that while he would welcome a partnership, Yesh Atid was the only party that could realistically overthrow Netanyahu. Confidence aside, however, Yesh Atid is currently trailing significantly behind Netanyahu's Likud in the polls.
יש משפט שכל יש עתידניק יודע לצטט. בהתחלה הם מתעלמים ממך, אחר כך הם צוחקים עליך, אחר כך הם נלחמים בך, ואז אתה מנצח.
In related news, while Yesh Atid and the Likud parties, among others, are hitting the campaign ground running, many other parties are still somewhat in a state of disarray.
First, on Tuesday evening, Israeli news outlet Walla announced that Knesset member Moti Yogev of the Jewish Home Party will no longer be running to lead the party. He penned a letter explaining his decision to withdraw his candidacy yesterday, saying that after Ayelet Shaked and Naftali Bennett left to form the new Right Party, remaining members, quote, took advantage of the situation and took over the party undemocratically. He added that religious Zionism is in an emergency, and the party should hold immediate primary elections. Meanwhile, retired IDF Brigadier General Gal Hirsch announced Tuesday that he will be forming the Magen Israel or the Shield of Israel party ahead of April elections, making him now the fourth former army official to do so. Former Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon and former IDF Chief of Staff Benny Gantz both registered their new Telem and Israel Resilience parties respectively, and on Sunday, former IDF Major General Yom Tov Samia launched the Beyachad party, which means together but is also an acronym for Security, Israel, Social, and Democratic in Hebrew. Hirsch's announcement to enter the political ring, however, comes as the biggest surprise, though, as he's expected to face indictments of tax evasion and related offenses in the coming weeks. Hirsch says the charges are baseless.
Moving now to the Joint Arab List, it seems that the coalition of minority Knesset members is now on its last legs, as Knesset member Ahmad Tibi has just removed his Ta'al party from the Joint Arab List, announcing instead that he will be running independently. The Knesset approved Tibi's request Wednesday morning. The removal of the Ta'al party from the Joint Arab List seems to come as the last nail in the coffin for the group, however, as MKs Khanin Zoabi, Jamal Zahalka, Dov Khanin, and Masoud Naim have all now announced that they will not be running in the April elections at all. Further, the head of the Joint List, Knesset member Ayman Odeh, reportedly didn't even know that Tibi planned to drop out. He supposedly heard it first on the news, just like everyone else. And Odeh lamented Tibi's decision, saying that breaking up the Joint List is exactly what Netanyahu and the extreme right wants, but not what's best for the people. Regardless, it seems Odeh's Joint Knesset List is dissolving between his fingers. The Chadash, Balad, the United Arab List, and Ta'al parties are all at greater odds than they've ever been since joining up, and the future of Arab-Israeli politics is in question. Until now, the group held 13 seats in the Knesset, becoming one of the largest factions of the opposition in parliament. And according to the most recent polls, had the Arab List not broken up, the Joint List would still have gotten at least 12 seats out of 120. But now, who knows? In somewhat shocking developments, former Israeli Energy Minister and Knesset member Gonen Segev was convicted Wednesday morning on charges of spying on behalf of Iran. Segev confessed to the crimes as part of a plea agreement with the state and is now expected to serve a prison sentence of around 11 years.
Segev was arrested in May 2018, and according to the indictment against him, he's accused of acting as an agent for Iran against Israel over the course of a 6-year period. Now, while Segev reportedly told investigators that he never passed on anything classified to his handlers, during the time of his activity, he did allegedly pass information on Israel's energy industry, security, and on personnel from Israel's political and security-related fields. He even allegedly traveled all around the world to meet with his Iranian handlers, including to Iran. Therefore, with the gravity of these charges in mind, prosecutors reportedly sought a double-digit prison sentence regardless of his level of cooperation. In return for cooperating, however, the more serious charge of assisting the enemy in its war against Israel was removed from the indictment. Segev also made sure to note that his supposed intent was never to seriously aid Iran anyhow, but rather that he, quote, wanted to fool the Iranians and come back to Israel a hero, end quote. He was living in Nigeria at the time of his recruitment after his medical license in Israel was revoked over drug smuggling charges in 2005. Well, his plans of heroism are certainly dashed, and final sentencing is expected on February 11th.
In other security-related news, Israeli border police officers reported yesterday that 3 pipe bombs were found next to their posts in Abu Dis, near Jerusalem. This just after a pipe bomb exploded near the same base the night before. All 3 of these explosives were neutralized, however. And meanwhile, Palestinian terror group Hamas in Gaza announced Tuesday that it had apparently arrested upwards of 45 so-called collaborators inside the Strip, following the Israeli November 11th raid that nearly sparked a war. Iyad al-Bozum, the Hamas Interior Ministry spokesperson, said that Hamas's security services were able to arrest 45 agents after the incident east of Khan Yunis last November, and that they are all under investigation. And the suspects all stand accused of aiding Israel, though it's not clear in what way, nor is it clear whether or not these suspects had anything to do with the November 11th raids. That being said, Hamas did report the alleged methods used by Israel to coerce the suspects in question. They said Israel used fake accounts of attractive girls on Facebook and other social media sites to lure the suspects into conversations that led to blackmail and eventual recruitment. On November 11, 2018, the IDF conducted an operation which it argues was a fact-finding mission, but as Israeli operatives were traveling near Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip, their cover was blown and a firefight ensued. Israeli Lieutenant Colonel Mem and seven Hamas members were killed. And immediately following the incident, Palestinian terrorists in Gaza launched nearly 500 rockets into southern Israel in less than 2 days. 27 Israeli civilians were wounded in what was the largest barrage of rockets since the 2014 Gaza war. Israel, in turn, responded with a massive series of airstrikes, killing 7 more Palestinians. The United States Senate on Tuesday failed to pass a package of Middle East-related foreign policy legislation that included a controversial anti-BDS bill. The Senate voted 56-44 to pass the Strengthening America's Security in the Middle East Act, but failed to receive the necessary 60 votes to pass the legislation.
Well, the Combating BDS Act, one of the proposed bills in the package, led by Republican Senator Marco Rubio, seeks to give state and local governments authority to penalize companies that support the anti-Israel boycott, divestment, and sanctions, or BDS movement. While the Republicans threw their support behind the legislation, though, the bill drew attention to the policy divide with regards to Israel within the Democratic Party. Senator Bernie Sanders, an outspoken critic of Israel, and Dianne Feinstein both said that while they oppose the BDS movement, they would vote against the bill in question because it stifles First Amendment rights. Meanwhile, more senior Democrats, such as Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer, supported the anti-BDS bill, though he agreed to vote against the legislation until the government shutdown comes to an end. Still, in light of the Senate vote, the spotlight this week was on the newly elected progressive Democrats, mainly the first American Palestinian woman elected to Congress, Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, who has openly announced her support of BDS. She tweeted that supporters of Israel, quote, forgot what country they represent. This is the United States, where boycotting is a right and part of our historical fight for freedom and equality. Maybe a refresher on our U.S. Constitution is in order. Then get back to opening up our government instead of taking our rights away, end quote. Well, in response, Senator Rubio tweeted back that this dual loyalty canard is a typical anti-Semitic line. BDS isn't about freedom and equality, it's about destroying Israel. And if boycotting Israel is constitutionally protected, then boycotting companies that boycott Israel is also constitutionally protected. Tlaib's tweet also caused widespread condemnation from Jewish groups as being anti-Semitic as well. So Tlaib was forced to later clarify in a tweet that she was referring to U.S. senators such as Rubio, but the damage has already been done as a clear divide on Israel policy within the Democratic Party was highlighted.
The 2019 Eurovision Song Contest in Tel Aviv has finally released a teaser with the competition's new annual logo and motto, and just as expected, it's being received with very mixed reviews.
The logo, a star made of 3 sharp triangles overlapping one another, appears next to this year's slogan, Dare to Dream, and many critics are already pointing out perceived political messages behind the phrasing. The official EBU Cannes press release frames it entirely differently, however, writing that, quote, the triangle, one of the world's oldest shapes, is a cornerstone symbol found universally in art, music, cosmology, and nature, representing connection and creativity. As the triangles join and combine, they become a new single entity, reflecting the infinite stellar sky as the stars of the future come together in Tel Aviv for the Eurovision Song Contest 2019. Unquote. The EBU, or Eurovision Broadcasting Union, further points out that the logo's triangle motif is to be reflected across the competition stage in Tel Aviv, which is drafted by German designer Florian Wieder. Wieder in the past has also created sets for X Factor and the MTV Music Awards. The slogan and logo, on the other hand, were put together by Israeli branding companies Awesome Tel Aviv and Studio Adam Feinberg, respectively. 42 nations will be competing this year at Eurovision, and tickets go on sale at the end of this month.
Speaking about Eurovision, ILTV's Joy Gavijon is here now to talk with us a bit about how Tel Aviv is preparing for this massive show. Joy?
Hi, Aaron. Yes, that's right. We talked about the stage, about the logo, but that's not only it. Remember, there are, as you said before, 42 nations competing this year, which means a lot of people.
All right, so actually let's put that in numbers then. For example, how many people did Lisbon have last year?
Okay, so for Eurovision 2018, Lisbon drew around 30,000 visitors from abroad. And apparently this year, Tel Aviv is expecting somewhere around 20,000 foreigners. So there are some very important aspects about this. On one side, the city needs to be prepared for this amount of visitors all at once. I'm talking about infrastructure, transportation, accommodations. Producing this kind of event needs investment and clear coordination between many ministries. And on the other side, we have the direct revenue and the boost of tourism for Israel.
Right. I mean, yeah, all these people are going to eat here, shop here, visit,
Exactly.
Places, do the touristy thing while they're here for Eurovision, and that's good for Israel.
Yes, the competition will last for 4 days from May 14th to May 18th. And according to No Camels, the estimated direct revenue for this event is around 100 million shekels or $27 million. Big, big numbers.
It's very promising as well. So,
Yeah.
All right, now going back to the infrastructure and the prices, are the hotels going to be enough to accommodate this many visitors?
Well, that's a good question. Look, only with the hotel's capacity here in Tel Aviv, it's not enough.
Okay,
for sure.
so that's actually what I expected. So what's being done?
Yeah, so to that we need to add all the Airbnbs and people subletting their apartments, which, by the way, are actually very expensive. We all know that Tel Aviv is an expensive city, but when it comes to Airbnbs, last year Bloomberg released an index of the world's most expensive Airbnb cities, and surprise, surprise, Tel Aviv is number 4th on the list.
I'm not surprised at all,
Yes,
actually,
I
unfortunately.
imagined.
Okay, so again, is the government then planning some kind of solution for these problems?
Well, according to some reports in the last few months, the municipality of Tel Aviv is planning 2 things: building a massive tent, city tent in the Ayercom Park, where people will be able to sleep for a much cheaper price. Wow. And also, they're planning to bring a special cruise ship that will have up to 500 rooms.
And I imagine that is also going to be pricey.
Yes, of course. I mean, we're not talking about a tent anymore, but apparently the price will still be reasonable, somewhere around $50 per person per night, including 3 meals.
That's actually really reasonable.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's appealing, it's nice, and on a nice cruise in the Mediterranean. I can only
Not
imagine that
bad.
a lot of fans are going to try and get a place on the cruise.
Yes, for sure, yes.
All right, well, for now, we'll have to wait, unfortunately, and see how everything unfolds. But one thing is for sure, after Netta's winning performance, Israelis are very excited about Eurovision 2019.
And everyone around the world is.
Oh, yeah, as they should be.
Yes.
Joy, thank you for your report.
Thank you, Aaron.
In a landmark unveiling Tuesday night, Game of Thrones author and creator George R.R. Martin discovered that he is, in fact, almost a quarter Jewish. And actually, the Season 5 premiere of PBS's Finding Your Roots, which aired yesterday evening, contained several other dramatic revelations into Martin's family history.
The show has already had its share of guests who discovered that they have Jewish roots, but this episode brought out some serious family secrets. Having grown up with a half-Italian father and a part Irish mother, Martin believed that he had had at least some Italian blood. But as it turns out, he in fact has no Italian in his DNA at all. Instead, they uncovered that he is actually 22.4% Ashkenazi Jewish, which is the same as having one Jewish grandparent. Not having a known Jewish relative, though, the show did some digging, and as it turns out, Martin's paternal grandmother Grace was left by her Italian husband Louis, who then went on to have another family. And if Martin was in fact Louis's grandson, then he should bear a partial match to one of the children Louis fathered after having left Grace. But the show tracked down a son of Louis and found no match at all. This led to speculation that the reason for Louis leaving was the discovery that Grace had had an affair with a Jewish man. Well, growing up, Martin was very close with his grandmother, and this revelation was a huge shock to him. He told historian and host Henry Louis Gates Jr., quote, "You've uprooted my worldview."
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. With the white city of Tel Aviv clamoring to get into shape ahead of Eurovision 2019, today's word is hachanot, meaning preparations. Individuals, storefronts, hotels, and everyone else in the city are all making their hachanot, or preparations, ahead of the massive droves of visitors who are expected to come for the show. And in fact, many are even mechinim, or preparing to rent out their homes during the times of the contest, expecting to make at least a whole month's rent over just a few nights. So if you are planning to come anytime soon, make sure that you're muchanim, or prepared for some busy streets. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy and cool with scattered showers and a low of about 47 or 8 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow you can expect sunny skies and a slight rise in temperatures to a high of 65 or 18 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.69 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you for watching.